There's a specific kind of wrong memory that doesn't happen to one person. It happens to millions of people in the same exact way at the same time with total confidence, and scientists have a real name for it. It started with one woman noticing something odd. In the 2000s, a paranormal researcher named Fiona Broom realized she clearly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison sometime in the 1980s. She remembered news coverage. She remembered a widow giving a speech. None of it happened. Mandela was released from prison in 1990, became president of South Africa in 1994, and lived for another 2 decades after that. Broom was simply wrong. Here's the part that made this more than one person's bad memory. When she mentioned it publicly, she discovered she wasn't alone. Thousands of people from different countries who had never spoken to each other remembered the exact same false version of events. Not a vague sense that something bad happened to Mandela, a specific, detailed memory of his death in custody years before it was true. That's when the term Mandela Effect was born. And once people had a name for it, the examples multiplied fast. Ask someone to spell the classic children's book series about a family of bears. An enormous number of people will confidently write Berenstain with an E. The actual spelling has always been Berenstain with an A. Not changed, not updated. Always A. And yet the wrong spelling doesn't feel wrong to the people saying it. It feels like a fact they've simply always known. Or picture the Monopoly man, the mascot on the box. Most people describe him wearing a monocle. He never has. 0 games, 0 official art across the entire history of the brand show him with one. People aren't guessing when they describe it. They're recalling an image with real, specific detail, an image that was never real. The same pattern shows up with a famous movie line. Darth Vader never says, "Luke, I am your father." The actual line is, "No, I am your father." Millions of people would bet money on the version that was never spoken. These aren't cases of people being careless or uninterested. Many of the people reporting these memories are specifically the kind of person who cares enough to notice details, the kind of person who reads carefully, watches closely, pays attention. That's what makes this genuinely strange. It's not indifference producing these errors. It's something happening at a deeper level than attention or interest ever could explain. So what's actually going on? Researchers who study memory have a well-documented explanation, even if the internet has run in far weirder directions with it, toward alternate timelines and parallel universes merging together. The scientific explanation is less exotic, but honestly almost as unsettling once you understand it. It's called confabulation, and it's not lying. It's your brain unknowingly filling in gaps with plausible information and then presenting that reconstruction to you as a genuine memory, with full confidence, no warning label attached. Memory was never a recording. It doesn't work like a video file, stored intact and replayed on command. Every time you recall something, your brain is actively reconstructing it, pulling fragments together and rebuilding the scene in the moment, influenced by everything you already know, expect, and assume. Cognitive scientists sometimes describe this using something called schema theory. Your brain relies on existing patterns, on schemas, to fill in details it doesn't actually have stored. Berenstain isn't a common way to end a surname in English. Berenstain is. Your brain has seen hundreds of names ending that way, and it quietly, automatically nudges an unfamiliar name towards the pattern that feels statistically normal, without asking your permission first. The Monopoly man works almost the same way. A wealthy, formal-looking cartoon gentleman practically screams monocle, top hat, cane, based purely on a cultural stereotype of old money elegance most people have absorbed from decades of unrelated media. Your brain isn't inventing the detail from nowhere, it's borrowing it from an extremely common visual pattern and quietly attaching it to a character who never actually had it. And Darth Vader's line gets rewritten for a cleaner reason entirely. "Luke, I am your father" is simply better as a standalone quote. It's punchier, more quotable, easier to say out of context, which is exactly the version that gets repeated in parodies, references, and casual conversation for decades afterward. Every repetition, in a slightly wrong form, subtly reinforces the wrong version a little more, until the repeated version starts to feel more real than whatever was actually said on screen once, decades ago. That's the part that explains why this happens to groups instead of individuals. A memory error alone in your head stays small and personal. But once a slightly wrong version gets repeated publicly, In conversation, in parody, in casual reference, it stops behaving like a private mistake and starts behaving like shared cultural information. Everyone hearing the wrong version isn't pulling it from a faulty original memory anymore. They're absorbing an already wrong version directly from the people around them, and it arrives feeling exactly as credible as the truth would have because socially it's being delivered the exact same way the truth is. Here's the detail that makes this genuinely unsettling rather than just a fun trivia curiosity. False memories don't necessarily feel weaker or less certain than accurate ones. In controlled memory studies, researchers have repeatedly found that confidence and accuracy aren't reliably connected at all. People can report a fabricated memory with the exact same emotional certainty, the exact same vivid sensory detail, as a memory of something that genuinely happened. Your brain doesn't attach a warning label to reconstructed memories. It hands you the finished result and lets you assume, every single time, that it's simply what happened. Which means the sensation of being completely sure about something is not actually reliable evidence that it's true. It just means your brain successfully finished reconstructing a scene and handed it to you with total confidence, the same way it does for real memories and false ones alike, using the exact same internal process either way. This connects to something bigger than spelling errors and monocles. If your own memory, the thing you'd trust before almost anything else about your own life, can be quietly, invisibly wrong and feel completely correct while it's happening, it raises an uncomfortable question about how much of what you're sure about right now, in this moment, was actually built the same way. Reconstructed, borrowed from a pattern, reinforced by repetition rather than recorded intact from something that actually happened exactly the way you remember it. You don't get a signal when this happens. There's no internal flag, no asterisk, no moment of doubt built into the process. The wrong version simply arrives, fully formed, indistinguishable from the truth. And it's usually only when it collides directly with a fact, a photograph, an original recording, that the gap becomes visible at all. So the next time you're completely certain about something small, a name, a line, a detail from years ago, it's worth remembering that certainty was never proof. It's just what your brain feels like right before it turns out to be wrong.